All right, welcome back. We are back at our stories of each village in Alaska. We're going to continue going through one village at a time so we can get to know our state. And I will try to give a brief summary of each village in a concise way. So today we are going through it alphabetically, and today we're on the Seas. Today we'll be doing Central Alaska, and that's not a region, it's the name of a village, Central Alaska. And Chalkyitsik, Chalkyitsik, Alaska. Now, these are located in similar places, these two villages, but we'll start with Central Alaska. Central is located on the Steese Highway, which is Highway 6, about 125 miles northeast of Fairbanks, along a small creek called Crooked Creek. I like those small creeks. There's something sweet and calm about them. Anyway, as of 2020, the population was 66 people, which is down from 96 in 2010. So the population's gone down. The first census of Central was in 1950 with 41 people. The population of Central peaked in the year 2000 with 134 people. But today it is 66. No, 66. The record high temperature was 92 degrees. The lowest temperature recorded there was negative 69. Now, 85% of the residents are considered white. So it's primarily not a native village, but there are some native residents there. 7.5% are native. So the history is that gold, and just like so many villages in Alaska, their history goes back to either some mining operation of a mineral, or it's gold. And in this case, it is gold. Gold was discovered in the Circle mining district in the 1890s. And a need arose for a supply point on the Yukon between Circle and the mining operations at Mammoth, Mastodon, Preacher, and Birch Creek. A place called Central House was constructed in 1894, and it became the center of a small community of miners and provided shelter to travelers and support services to nearby miners. So the name Central comes from because it was a central location between mining operations. In 1906, the Alaska Road Commission began construction of a wagon road to replace the primitive pack trail from Circle to Birch Creek. By 1908, the wagon road had reached Central. The original roadhouse that was originally built burned down, and it was rebuilt in the mid-1920s. A post office came along in 1915, and by 1917, a road to Fairbanks was completed. And so for the first time, Central became on the road system. The Steese Highway, or Highway 6, on which lies Central, is 160 miles long, going from Fairbanks to Circle, Alaska, which was completed in 1927. It was named after U.S. Army General James G. Steese, who was the former president of the Alaska Road Commission. The road is paved from Fairbanks to Central, and after that, it becomes a narrow, gravel, winding road. Now, mining declined in the 50s and 60s, and then it picked up again in the 70s, and it peaked out in 1978. With 65 gold operations employing over 200 people because the price of gold went up, and so gold became more desirable. And so that was kind of one of the peaks of Central Alaska. Today, the Steese Roadhouse, which is the store there in town, is a bar, general store, and a gas station. It serves as the midway point for the Yukon Quest Race, held this very month in February. Or no, now it's March right now. It was held last month then. So that store serves as the midway point for the Yukon Quest Race. And it makes it kind of fitting for it to be called Central also, being the midway point for the race. Kind of multiple reasons to call it Central. There's a museum in Central called the Circle District Museum, highlighting the mining history of the area, established in 1984. On exhibit is the first printing press north of Juneau, which produced Alaska's first newspaper in the interior. I thought that was pretty cool. It'd be neat to see an old printing press. You can also view a collection of gold nuggets and flakes donated by local miners. Now, when I read that, I was like, what gold miner would donate gold nuggets to a museum? But apparently some did. All right, a prominent hike near Central is called Eagle Summit, which is the highest point along the Steese Highway at 3,624 feet. And it's reported to be a great place to watch the summer solstice, which is June 21st. And you might see caribou herds going by as it's near a caribou migration route. So that would be a photogenic place to be. Central's airstrip it spells pace, which is kind of cool. Papa Alpha. Oh man, what is C? Papa Alpha. What is C? Wow, I'm a bad pilot. C, Echo, which in the airstrip's at 937 feet in elevation. It's labeled by ForeFlight as poor gravel. It's only 2,782 feet long, which is shorter than most village runways, but it's still long enough for most charter aircraft. Like most villages, there are RNAV approaches for both runways 8 and 26. And it looks like there's a good number of hills around. So the approaches I noticed when I was looking at the plates, they keep you pretty high because of all the surrounding hills. And so that's something you should expect there. So that is a summary of Central. I looked a little bit into like what churches there are there, and I did not find any information on that on the sources that I use, but it doesn't mean there isn't a church there, but I'm just not sure. So that is Central Alaska. Let's talk about Chalkyitsik. Now, to pronounce this, I had to like write it out phonetically. Chalkyitsik. Chalkyitsik. This is apparently a Gwich'in word. The name Chalkyitsik means fish with a hook at the mouth of the creek. And so it sounds like a place that I would want to go as a fisherman. I was trying to hook the fish. Chalkyitsik is located on the Black River, just 50 miles east of Fort Yukon, Alaska. The Fort Yukon seems like it's it's a larger town, and it's like centralized for all these surrounding villages. Actually, it looks like a neat like hub town. I do have some friends that have lived out there before. So anyway, Chalkyitsik means fish with a hook at the mouth of the creek. It was originally shortened, the Gwich'in name was shortened in English to just fish hook. And it was the name on the census between 1930 and 1940 was fish hook. Now, traditionally, Chalkyitsik had been an important seasonal fishing site for the Gwich'in people. The first census was in 1930, and it was called fish hook at the time, which recorded a population of 35. As of 2020, the population was 56. And the peak population for Chalkyitsik was in 1970 at 130 residents. The highest temperature recorded was 94, and the lowest was negative 69, which is really similar to Central's temperatures because these two villages are pretty close to each other. Now, some archaeological excavations in the area show that the people have used this area for a long time. Even elders report living nomadically in their own memory, living at the headwaters of the Black River from autumn to spring, and then floating downriver for the summer. So they kind of moved around seasonally. There was a missionary named Archdeacon Robert MacDonald, who was Canadian-born, and the first Protestant missionary to be assigned to work with the Arctic peoples in the Yukon Territory starting in 1862, and he ended up in Fort Yukon. He encountered the Gwich'in people between some trips between 1863 and 1868, and this is where we get our first written descriptions of the Gwich'in people. Now, I've talked about MacDonald before, actually, in other episodes, so he's a prominent figure for the Gwich'in people. Because MacDonald married a Gwich'in woman and translated the Bible, he wrote a grammar book, and he translated other Christian materials into the Gwich'in language. MacDonald spent 40 years of his life in this work until he passed away in 1913. So a very neat guy to read about. Now, around the turn of the century, a man named William Salmon, a Canadian Indian who married a Black River woman or a Gwich'in woman, he built a structure about 70 miles upriver from the present site of this village, and he called the place Salmon Village, named after himself. Kind of interesting that his name is Salmon, given this is Alaska, and his name was William Salmon. And then in the late 1930s, a boat bound for Salmon Village, full of building materials for a school, was not able to make it up the river to Salmon Village. And the boat only made it up to the present location for Chalkyitsik. And then they ended up just building the building right there as far as they made it. And so a building was built, and the people in the surrounding area began to settle around the school. And by 1969, there were 26 houses, a store, 2 churches, and a community hall. And that is how this village came to be. It's not even that old. It's kind of surprising. It takes, a gold rush and a school, and that's just where people congregate and settle instead of being nomadic. This seems to be a pretty consistent story of a lot of villages in Alaska. Now, this was really cool. A prominent person in this village is Chief David Salmon, who he was born in 1912, and he was son of William Salmon, who founded the village. That was in 1901. The village was founded, and Chief David Salmon was born in 1912. Now, Chief David Salmon passed away not too long ago in 2007 at age 95. Now, when he was only 9 years old, his mother died of tuberculosis, and he was sent to an Episcopal boarding school in Fort Yukon from 1924 to 1925, where he gained an appreciation for education and the Episcopal faith. This appreciation continued as he worked for his father on the trapline for many years, where he continued to consume books, and he learned through practical life learning and knowledge. His English improved over the years. He learned about other cultures and learned how to make his own weapons and tools and even canoes. His father taught him the Athabascan history and culture, which became instrumental in his role of becoming chief of the Gwich'in people. Now, it was only at age 29 that Salmon became the chief of Chalkyitsik, and later he became the first traditional chief for the Gwich'in people in 2004. Salmon used his position and influence to begin many public works and programs, such as advocacy for education, teaching his community to keep Athabascan traditions alive by putting on display traditional Athabascan items, including pre-contact canoe designs that he built. And these would otherwise be lost to time but for Salmon's efforts. He also trained to become the first Episcopal priest by attending Bible schools in Michigan, New York, and Arizona, where his English improved significantly. He spent much of his life sharing the gospel with his own people in the Gwich'in language by leading daily Bible studies in his home, preaching, and he was invited to many revival meetings. He believed that the disregard of Indian law and leadership correlated with the social issues the indigenous people are facing. He credited his achievements to God and called himself a servant of both God and the people of Chalkyitsik. Oh my gosh, I got to work on that pronunciation. Chalkyitsik. All right, Salmon is said to have considered himself a slave Indian for the sake of his people. So quite a legacy of Chief David Salmon, and just died back in 2007. An amazing legacy. Now in Chalkyitsik, there was a Baptist church called Chalkyitsik Baptist Mission, but that is no longer there. The Assemblies of God Church also has a presence in that village. All right, guys, I said I'm going to try to keep these shorter and more concise than I have in the past. So that is it for the villages of Central and Chalkyitsik. Now, next week, we will be covering the village of Chase and Chefornek. And so we'll be doing those next week. That's it for today. Thank you guys for tuning in on Tell Your Story Alaska, the stories of each village in our state, so we can get to know our state just a little bit more, one village at a time. See you next week.